Well, good morning and welcome back to the Broadcast Retirement Network. I'm Jeff Snyder. This is BRN AM for Thursday, December 15th, 2022. And our top story today, telling Americans to eat better isn't working. We need to make healthier food. And joining me now to discuss this and a lot more, Mark Bittman is with Columbia's Mailman Public School of Health. Well, Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program this morning.
Pleasure to be here, Jeff. Nice to see you too.
Yeah, and really picking up on a great piece you wrote for The Guardian about telling Americans to eat better doesn't really work. So let's step back a little bit. How are we doing? And I think I know the answer, but I just want to level set for the audience. How are we doing in terms of selecting the right food to eat every day as Americans?
I mean, we're doing terribly. It's not our fault, but we have every number that measures public health related to diet has gone in the wrong direction for 30 years or more. And we really haven't cracked the code. I mean, the piece you're referring to is about what we ought to be doing, but we really haven't cracked the code on how to help Americans eat better. And my contention, large part of my contention, and what we'll be talking about is that this is really a problem, not of demand, but of supply. And
just to kind of follow up on that, I mean, you look at the types of diseases that Americans are inflicted with: diabetes, obesity, cancer, and a lot of this is beyond COVID, but there are a lot of major underlying maladies that are affecting many Americans. And I think and I'm not a doctor, obviously, I'm just a television host, but I guess someone can point back at the food supply, what people are eating, as a general starting point for disease.
There are something like 500,000 or 600,000 deaths caused by diet-related diseases in the United States every year. That obviously outflanks COVID in terms of numbers of death. And we assume that COVID deaths are going to be in the tens of thousands in 2023, not in the hundreds of thousands. But even if that's wrong, it's really unlikely that COVID or anything else is going to kill 500,000 Americans a year for the next 20 years, which is a sort of likely guess of what will happen with diet-related diseases if we don't do something about that. So diet-related diseases, that is chronic diseases, you mentioned a few, you left out, not being critical, you just didn't mention heart disease, which is a big deal. So diabetes, most people don't die directly from diabetes, but diabetes is a direct result of a sugar-laden diet and of a typical American diet. And diabetes often leads to heart disease, and heart disease does kill people. So diabetes, heart disease, various cancers are all diet-related, and together they form the leading cause of death in the United States, as you said, outranking COVID.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to as you said, I didn't mean to minimize heart disease. It was just
we get that.
ticking them off as I thought about them. But we go into the grocery store, and there are Food and Drug, approved labels that say how many calories is a particular product, what's the sugar, what's the cholesterol. And also, when I go into great cities like New York, and I used to live in New York for 12 years, you go look at a menu and it tells you how many calories and what's heart healthy and what's not. It just seems like we just do not make the best decisions as individuals. It's always about what tastes good here and what it triggers up here in the brain.
Right, but it's not so much the decisions we make as the choices we're presented with. So you can only choose from what's available to you. Food manufacturers have spent the last half century, really the last century, but especially in the last 20 to 50 years, engineering food that's designed to hit those hot spots that turn you on. And they've done this scientifically, excuse me. They've done this scientifically using MRIs and using sophisticated techniques that most of us don't know about or couldn't understand if we did. So when you look at that pizza, when you look at those Doritos, when you look at that cheeseburger, when you look at that ice cream, whatever, you are habituated to be turned on by that food. When you look at that apple, when you look at that banana, when you look at that head of broccoli, you feel like I'm obligated to eat that, or I know I should eat that. But there's a further problem, and the problem really stems from what our agricultural supply provides us with. And on the big picture is that USDA and other government agencies have spent more than 100 years encouraging farmers to grow, to use modern equipment, to use hybridized seeds, to use pesticides and chemicals in order to produce maximum yields and to establish the biggest farms, the most productive farms possible. So measures of success are yield and secondarily profit. I mean, for most people, primarily profit, but that comes from yield. And the best technology and the best research has gone into producing corn and soybeans and secondarily some other crops, wheat, of course, and some others, but corn and soybeans are the big two. And anyone who's been to the Midwest knows that you can drive for miles and miles, sometimes hours and hours, and see nothing but corn and soybeans. Now, then the question is, we know we don't eat a lot of corn and soybeans. And there's something like 1,500 pounds of corn produced per capita per year. Most of us might eat 3 pounds of corn directly per year. Where's the rest of that going? And the answer is some of it goes to ethanol, which is a problem, not a diet-related problem, but it is a farming problem and an energy problem. But you and I don't need to go there. Some of it goes for cheap animal food to produce industrially raised animals, and we can get into that. And some of it, the rest of it goes into producing junk food. And it's junk food, now more increasingly called ultra-processed food by nutritionists and scientists. It's ultra-processed food that is really the cause of these diet-related diseases. And this is the key statistic and the only statistic I really want to give you. 60% of the calories in the American diet now come from ultra-processed foods, which means our choices, the majority of our choices in the supermarket are bad for us. So regardless of what we're triggered by, what we crave, what we think we like and we think we don't, we are presented with 60% of the options we're presented with are not good for us. So if we all chose to eat brilliantly starting tomorrow, fruits and vegetables and whole grains and legumes and the usual, blah, blah, blah. If we all chose to eat that stuff tomorrow, there isn't even enough of it to feed us, because the agricultural choices dictate that what we're presented with is cheap animal products and ultra-processed foods.
Well, Mark, thank you for that. And I want to take a very quick break, because when we come back, I want to talk about solving this issue. How do we get from point A to point Z, and a better American diet and also a better international diet as well? You're going to want to stay tuned right here on BRN AM. Imagine a new television network that will make you richer, healthier, and in control of your financial future. This network is for the policewoman in Nashville, Tennessee, the baker in Dubuque, Iowa, the teacher in Lexington, Kentucky. We want to make the idea of savings and retirement culturally relevant. But what do you see as a defining issue of the midterms? especially for the smaller businesses. I mean, they are the lifeblood of the American economy. Featuring exclusive interviews, current affairs, and docuseries. 33 years old, you retired early.
The philosophy is money only matters if it helps you live a life that you love.
But you got to start thinking about retirement as soon as you get in.
The Broadcast Retirement Network will drive very high engagement with premium partnerships. So this isn't retirement and savings for your parents or grandparents. This is for all Americans. And we're going to change the way you think about money. Welcome to the next frontier of retirement and savings. This is BRN, the Broadcast Retirement Network.
Are you stuck with a low credit score? A credit report and score that's causing you to be denied credit or pay higher interest rates than others for the same things? Then do what Terrence did and call Credit Repaired for your free credit evaluation to help restore your credit.
I started thinking about buying a new house, and my score wasn't where I needed it to be. I called and spoke with one of the representatives, and we just had a good conversation, and I liked what he was saying.
Just one call for his free credit evaluation was all it took to start back on the track to repairing his credit.
I'm seeing the deletions and I'm getting the report, so I know something's being done. It does make a difference to me.
All it takes is one call to get started.
Credit Repair has given me a second chance to have a better credit score.
Don't let a low credit score hold you back another day. Do what Terrence did and make the call for your free credit evaluation.
Call 800-819-4152. That's 800-819-4152. Again, 800-819-4152.
Welcome back. We're talking this morning to Mark Bittman of Columbia's Mailman School of Public Health. Well, Mark, thanks so much for sticking around for segment number 2. Really appreciate you joining us this morning and appreciate the conversation.
Well, it's important stuff. I'm happy to talk about it.
Absolutely. And as I gotta be honest, and as you were ticking off Doritos, pizza, I was starting to salivate.
Started watering.
My mouth started watering. So I was, I'm not. I'm susceptible to that marketing as well.
We all
are. We all are. And
everybody eats junk food. There is not anyone who tells you they're not eating junk food is either a liar or really an exceptional person.
That's right. They're like in the top 0.5% of the population out there. Okay, so you kind of laid out the problem, and it's a problem that has evolved over the last 100 years or so, and we've gotten to this point. Let's talk about the solution or your solutions. How do we get a healthier food supply and vis-a-vis have healthier individuals and lower the cost of health care for all of us? And by the way, it's even higher in retirement.
It's interesting, if you look at a graph of healthcare costs versus food costs, the more individuals in countries spend on food, the lower the health costs. And the less people spend on food, the higher the health costs. The United States spends people in the United States spend about the lowest percentage of their income of any country on food, around 7%. And of course, we have the highest healthcare costs in the world. I'm not saying that everybody needs to go out and spend more money on food. We have tried, this might take a minute. We have tried to educate people about how to eat better. And as I said at the outset, that hasn't worked. It's not a question of how do you teach the poor mother with 2 children who's working 2 jobs that she shouldn't be giving her children fast food. That everybody knows what food is good for you. You can ask anybody what they ought to be eating, and most people know the correct answer to that. And it's pretty simple. It's fruits and vegetables and legumes and whole grains and a minimum of junk and a minimum of animal products. Why don't people do that? Well, I said that's because the supply is producing junk food and animal products. So we have to change the supply. And how do we do that? Well, the big picture, is that ultimately we need to not subsidize corn and soybeans, but subsidize what the USDA, not ironically, calls specialty products. And that means real food, fruits and vegetables, nuts, seeds, legumes, whole grains, and so on. How do you make that happen? Well, sadly, I don't know if sadly is the right word. How do you make that happen? The long-term answer is you find representatives in Congress and the Senate who are willing to tackle the difficult issues about food. Right now, the big food lobby, which is allied with, so you have producers of consumer packaged goods, you have producers of meat and dairy, you have producers of petrochemicals, which are used in farming, producers of machinery that's used in farming, producers of hybridized seeds. Together, that lobby is the biggest lobby in the country. More people are agitating to continue the status quo in agriculture than even are lobbying for the Department of Defense. More money is spent on that. What we need are incentives for farmers to grow real food. What we need are incentives for farmers to steward the land, to do agriculture that reduces greenhouse gases, which agriculture is the second leading source of greenhouse gases and therefore of climate change. We need people who are willing to farm and eager to farm in ways that benefit all of us. And the real key, I mean, if there is a key, and this is not a simple matter, but the real key is for us to ask the question, what is food for? If the answer to that question is to nourish our people, to minimize impact on the planet, to create health and well-being, then we have an interesting starting place for how do we produce food and what kind of food do we produce. We act as though the answer to the question, what is food for, is to make profits for big corporations. So those are two very divergent paths. But if we started to think about food as our source of nourishment, it's one of the three most important, I mean, we have water, we have air, we have food. Three most important substances on earth. Our source of nourishment. If the purpose of food is to nourish us, we would take a different tack than if we say the purpose of food is to make money for large corporations, but we act as if the second were true.
Well, in terms of, you mentioned the lobbying groups, in terms of changing that, isn't it up to all of us to say, hey, congressperson, senator, state representative, I don't want this. And number one, but also number two, if I'm interested in healthy choices, where do I shop? Because the word organic, that is a word that is thrown around. I feel like that is actually a brand. Like if the word organic doesn't necessarily have to be organic, it's a brand. Everything is organic. Organic Doritos, organic,
right.
Organic tomatoes, right? So how can I shop and send that message so that I'm picking the right foods for my family, knowing that 60% is ultra processed, my word, not yours, crap, that's going to jack up your insulin level and make you more susceptible to some of these sugar and heart-related diseases?
So you have two questions here. We'll take them one at a time. The first is about elected officials. And I think as a retirement network, you must deal with this constantly because you have many issues that affect older Americans. I'm one of them. And many of them can be resolved better by Congress. And I think as you would ask about healthcare, as you would ask about retirement benefits, as you would ask about anything, we should be asking elected officials, and that goes from your local municipal officials to state reps to federal representatives, what is your position on food? And we should be advocating for better agriculture. That means not routine use, eliminating the routine use of antibiotics in feeding animals. It means reducing the use of chemicals in agriculture. It is reducing subsidies to soy and corn farmers, and so on. Most representatives have not thought about this stuff, or they're beginning to think about this stuff. It's important for us to push them on it. The second, you're going back to individual choice. And I just want to make it clear that not everybody has the ability that you, me, and probably many of your viewers and listeners have, which is to make those choices, to say, sure, I can afford to buy whatever I want to buy. What should I buy? But the answer to that question is pretty simple. You should buy food that's in close to its natural state as possible. That looks like food, that doesn't have 57 ingredients, that you could make yourself, that your grandmother or your great-grandmother would recognize as food. Those are the things that we should be buying. And they are kind of everywhere. And those of us with time and money can buy them. So that answer is pretty simple. It's just that it can't be acted upon by everybody in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, you bring up a really good point, and there are people who socioeconomically can't afford to do that for whatever reason.
Right. Well, many of them are on fixed incomes,
yep,
as are most retired people. So
absolutely. And by the way, I can only imagine what inflation, even though it came down a little bit today, to I think 7.1%, it's pretty high. That makes healthier choices even more expensive. And by the way, it makes the ingredients more expensive in a lot of these foods. I've noticed on the menu, food's going up 10, 20%. So that has a significant impact. I guess my last question for you, Mark, just to put it in context, we're always told, eat a healthy diet and exercise. And again, I'm 50 years old. I try to exercise every day. But can you out-train a bad diet? So if you get on the elliptical, for example, for 30 minutes, and you do all the things that the American Heart Association says to do to get up to your target heart rate, can that outperform eating a 60% ultra-processed food diet?
I mean, now you're talking about things kind of on an individual level, but I would in general, the answer to that is no, you can outrun a bad diet. But for some people, you probably can. But there's no reason, if you're going to be, you might want to consider being diligent enough to eat well as well.
Yeah.
Can I just plug, would you mind if I plugged my website, podcast, whatever?
No, I was going to ask you, how can we follow this research that you're doing? Because this is an important issue. We all eat. Some of us eat too much in my case, but we all eat. We all need to eat. We all need nourishment. So how do we follow you and the work that you and the team are doing at Columbia?
I'm most easily found at markbittman.com. I have a podcast called Food with Mark Bittman, which you can listen to anywhere. And we have a several times a week newsletter called Bittman Project. But the hub of my activity is markbittman.com.
Yeah. Well, Mark, great work. I really appreciate you. Great piece. Great issue to bring to light. And look, if we could just solve some of these problems related to our food supply, I think our illnesses and disease will go down and we would save a lot of money.
We have to. Yeah.
Mark, it's great to see you. Thanks so much for joining us on the program. And we look forward to having you back on the program again very soon, my friend.
Anytime, Jeff. Thank you.
And that wraps up this episode of BRN AM. Have a topic of interest, someone you think we should talk to, drop us a line. And don't forget, for all the latest curated news and lifestyle, wellness, finance, tech, so much more, and all in one place, check out today's edition of our daily newsletter, The Morning Pulse. Want to search our archives, check our latest content? Well, visit our website, and of course, all of our streaming partners. We're back again tomorrow for another edition of BRN AM. Until then, I'm Jeff Snyder. Stay safe, keep on saving, and don't forget, roll with the changes. Now is your opportunity to co-create content around any topic on the First Lifestyle and Wellness Network. Reach a global audience through our platform and co-own exclusive branded content. All of our programs are available on demand and also as audio-only podcasts, so you can take us on the go. Broadcast Retirement Network, available anytime, anywhere, and on any device.
Tax audits, tax liens, wage garnishments.
Every day we hear stories like this about good folks who are simply struggling to pay their bills. Each of them are living a frightening IRS tax nightmare, and they are afraid it will destroy their lives.
I'm a divorced single mom, and my ex-husband left me and the kids with a lot of unpaid bills, including unpaid taxes. I was really starting to show my stress on my kids because the IRS had sent me a letter demanding a huge payment from me. I couldn't afford it. So then the IRS was threatening to garnish my wages. I'm already living paycheck to paycheck. That would have put me over the edge financially.
It truly seemed hopeless, but then a friend at work told her to call the tax relief line.
The people at the tax relief line, they told me about something called innocent spouse relief. They worked it out so that all of the taxes from my ex are not my problem. I don't know how that works, and I don't care. All I care about is that I don't owe the IRS a dime, and they are not going to take my paycheck.
Even if it seems hopeless, you should call the number on your screen right now. There is absolutely no cost for the call or the consultation. You are under no obligation. If you are worried that the IRS could garnish your wages, seize your assets, even take your home, call us right now. The Tax Relief Line is here to help you. Now you have a knowledgeable, professional team of tax experts that are ready to negotiate with the IRS and fight for you to save you money. The Tax Relief Line's professionals have successfully negotiated thousands of cases, reducing and sometimes even eliminating the tax debt for their clients. It's very easy to get started. Simply call the number on your screen right now. You don't have to live in fear anymore. The call and the consultation are free.